Peace, and welcome to our top 10 Tim and Geoff Follin themes in gaming. We'll try to stick to themes that were composed by the brothers. They do have some great arrangements of some popular themes, but we want to focus on their compositions. With no further delay, here are 10 of our favorites, with a few honorable mentions. Our first up comes from Echo the Dolphin, Defender of the Future, Aquamarine Bay. First released on the Sega Dreamcast on June 16th of 2000. It saw a release 2 years later on the PS2 using the same soundtrack. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Do not get used to hearing CD quality themes on our list today, for the Follin brothers are chiptune masters. However, this theme is just good enough to squeeze its way into our top 10. It really has an aquatic feel, plus a few little echo sounds here and there, and you are left with a soothing track that really fits the mood of the game. The soundtrack overall is really good, but Aquamarine Bay stands out to me. In our number 9 spot, we have Plock, the beach theme. First released in 1993 for the Super Nintendo, developed by Software Creations, remember that name. And what starts out as a normal, basic theme soon develops into a full-fledged theme. One of the big things that I noticed from the Follin brothers' music is the lack of a basic loop. A lot of video game themes use loops to save memory, plus it helps minimize time needed on creation of said theme. Instead, these themes may have a small loop, but it doesn't last throughout the entire track like many others. One of the most common questions I think about when I hear Follin's music: how in the world did you squeeze this out of that? This is a Super Nintendo theme, but it's high quality and it does not suffer from compression like many other chiptunes. Number 8 is the Coronado Ship Battle theme from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Not to be confused with Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade that was published by Ubisoft, this version was published by Taito, and of course developed by Software Creations. Funky bass line catches my ear each time. Again, Tim using techniques seemingly not used very often on the NES. One thing I noticed after listening to his library is the vast amount of techniques he uses to achieve a wide variety of sounds. A lot of the tunes almost sound like something you would hear on a Commodore 64. In my opinion, one of Tim's greatest attributes is the ability to get the most out of the hardware. Whether it be from a Commodore or from a Nintendo, he never failed to push it to the limit. Lucky number 7 comes from Gauntlet 3 on the Commodore 64. Released in 1991, this game features music from both brothers. It's one of the best parts about the game, which is a common occurrence when Tim and Geoff are on the job. When I think of the Commodore 64, the first thing I think about is the music. There's a good variety of sounds, and when someone as talented as the Follin brothers get a hold of that sound chip, you get something like this. A top-notch theme from top-tier composers. It's a really unique theme. The first 16 or 17 seconds really draw me in, and around the 30-second mark, it picks up and develops its personality. The overall feel of the music screams Commodore 64, and that's something I can get behind. And at number 6, we have Treasure Master, the title theme. Released in 1991 for the NES, you would never guess who developed this game. Or you might have seen it coming. Developed by Software Creations. This game's title screen music is a remix of the theme song to the Starsky and Hutch television series, so you might just see it in an oddly familiar episode. Starsky and Hutch have nothing to do with the game. It's rumored that Tim was a fan of the show and decided to remix it. We allowed this entry because it's more than just a cover, it's a full-on remix. Tim did his usual thing. It has that distinct Follin flavor. I think his style can be picked out if you know what to listen for, and in my opinion, it's even easier to pick out on the NES. In at number 5, we have Magic Johnson's Fast Break, the high score theme. Released in 1988 for the NES, developed by none other than Software Creations. If you didn't know the name before watching this video, you will definitely know the name by the end. On this track, I think Tim Follin's experience with chiptunes really comes into play. He uses some techniques that you almost never hear on the NES. It's difficult to get the entire point across when we only play about 30 seconds of the theme. To get the full Follin Brothers experience, you need to check out the whole thing. If I learned anything about Tim Follin after listening to his music, is that he gives 100%, even if it's just some random background music theme on a relatively unknown game. Unlucky number 4 is from the unreleased game Time Tracks, the mission briefing theme. game that was never released. It was supposed to come out on the Sega Genesis. You can find it on the SNES, however, that uses a different soundtrack. Another theme on our list today that has some Echo the Dolphin vibes. In my opinion, I would say this is a mix of Echo the Dolphin and Streets of Rage. This man knows how to utilize the hardware. One of the only composers that I would put on the same level as Yuzo when it comes to that Yamaha sound chip in the Sega Genesis. However, I won't take it that far because there's only one game in which Tim Follin has produced for on the Sega Genesis. And unfortunately, as we stated, the game was never released. However, you can find the soundtrack out there, and it's worth a listen. In third place, we have the main theme from Solstice. Released in 1990 for the NES, this game was developed by who else other than Software Creations, the same company who is all over our list today. Don't be fooled by the first dozen seconds. This theme, in typical Follin fashion, completely changes and goes off in an entirely new direction. Some of the techniques used by the Follins are quite time-consuming, and the result is something so simple that you might not even think about it. I'll give you a quick example. Something as small as fading the track out. Using your usual techniques, you just fade it out. However, with the NES, fading is not an option. But what you can do is repeat the instrument again and again, each time at a lower volume. It will simulate a fade and you can get by. However, it's time consuming. Little things like this is what makes the Follin Brothers not just good, but great. In our silver position, we have the title screen theme from Pictionary on the NES. Released in 1990, this game was published by good old LJN. A meme that we must show. When you hire Tim Follin, it doesn't matter if it's just a simple board game. He's going all out. Tim Follin is the type of composer that you could hand him a trash can, a stick, and a rubber band, and he'll make a smash hit. I would call him the MacGyver of composers. It seems like he masters each console and really pushes them to their limits. I hear a lot of techniques from Tim Follin that I don't hear from any other chiptune composer. He seems to be on another level. In our gold position today, we have Stage 1 from Silver Surfer on the NES. Released in 1990, this shoot-'em-up game gets a bad rap, but I think one thing everybody can agree on is the music. It's outstanding. Another game developed by Software Creations, and I can't blame them for hiring the Follins again and again. If you found a composer as talented as this, why would you hire anyone else? I think Stage 1 music is some of the most important music in any game. You can always skip the title screen, but once you start to play, Stage 1 is unavoidable. When I think of Tim and Geoff Follin, I think of the Commodore 64. It surprised me that the NES pretty much dominated this list. But we are a little bit partial to NES music. It's the console that almost all of us grew up with. Anyways, last but not least, shout out to gold level patrons Bearsona and Quantum X. I am ICC. Thanks for watching. Peace.